Is it started?
It's 1 o'clock.
All right. Thank you for joining us. So while we are going through getting this presentation set up, we're going to launch a quick poll and let everybody sign in. Again, thank you for taking time out of the busy day. I know lots going on in the world, so we appreciate you considering us for your attention during this. So let me launch this poll and then we will get this thing underway. All right. So, what screen am I on here? Jared, I believe I'm looking at the presentation up in front of me on this one right now. So while we're going through this today, we're going over the future of air sealing. So how the industry has changed, what is happening, what is going on in the market, a lot of things around codes, a lot of things around health, a lot of concerns on how COVID has impacted a lot of scheduling, really just how we can innovate and move forward, and air sealing being at the heart of a lot of these high performance homes and just construction in general. So today we're going to go over what we're considering the future of air sealing. Inherent to the company, we believe we are the future. So AeroBarrier is going to fit and compensate and basically overcome a lot of these challenges that traditional methods struggle through. So we're going to go through again what those differences are, and a little housekeeping. This recording is happening live, so as we're going through, feel free to ask your questions, but know that about an hour, 2 hours after this, the recording will be pushed out. So anybody that's on the call, anybody that may fall off, things along those lines, there will be a recording that's sent out automatically. Again, use the question functionality throughout. We are going to try to go through. There's a lot of great content here today. So we're going to try to hold off questions towards the end, but know that that functionality is there. And then we'll have a short survey towards the end that we would love for you guys to fill out, just to give us a little feedback on how we're doing and get the ball rolling. So today we're joined by Scott and Jared. So little background, these are two representatives for the sales element of AeroBarrier. So Scott joins us from Canada, and then Jared in the US. Scott, would you like to give a little background on yourself?
I would. Great. Thank you very much, Bill. So yeah, I'm Scott Stevens. I'm with AeroBarrier Canada. I, with a couple of my partners, brought AeroBarrier to Canada 2 years ago, and it all, interestingly enough, started a conversation at lunch in Barcelona, Spain, 3 years ago with Gord Cook. I'm not sure if everybody knows Gord Cook, but Gord Cook, a building scientist, showed me this product, and we got a group of people together to bring that to Canada. It's going exceedingly well. We're really enjoying it. Geographically, I just want to let everybody know I'm in the Toronto area, and that would be home to the Toronto Raptors, which would be the champions still of the last real season. And I'm really thrilled to be here, and we got some really exciting stuff to talk about today. Talk about the benefits of AeroBarrier and how that works kind of for the builders, and also the opportunities for dealers. I'll turn it over to you, Jared.
All right, thank you. So Jared Scott, I am based out of Dayton, Ohio. That's where AeroSeal LLC, the parent company of AeroSeal duct sealing and AeroBarrier envelope sealing is located. So I come to the company. It's a strange story, but having a friend that worked here, and I saw an episode of the product on This Old House, and it prompted a phone call, and then another couple phone calls, and landed me here. So I just love the technology, love what it can do, and how it helps contractors and builders and and homeowners achieve really what they're looking for. So we'll talk more about that as we go.
Great. So I'm gonna quickly go through the agenda. Jared, I don't believe your screen is sharing right now. So as I'm going through, so today, some of the items we're gonna touch on are, why is air sealing important? I think a lot of us on the call understand it, but just to reiterate what the importance of it is, what some of those challenges of traditional methods we're facing and everything out in the market. Spray foams are out there, caulks are out there, you name it. There's various vapor barriers and air barriers, how AeroBarrier specifically overcomes many of those challenges, and then how to go about getting started with it. And like I said, a little Q&A at the end, and just to share out some poll results for Scott and Jared on the line. So based on the poll, we have a nice little split here. So we got about 22% energy raters, 10% installation contractors, 27% builders, 10% in the engineering and architect, and then 33 in the other category. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Jared Scott.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a really good mix too, by the way, and contractor. So hopefully, we're going to address everything generally, and hopefully how it applies. Keep in mind specifics around your role. There's the Q&A session, and then also at the end of this, we're happy to have a one-on-one call and meeting with you. So just talking real quickly, why is air sealing important? We think it's pretty simple. It's arguably one of the single greatest impacts to any build, right? So that when it comes to that aspect, there's a lot of data that's come from a number of different studies, and all of which point to air leakage is really the single biggest component of impact on energy savings and achieving good, healthy air in the living space. So these are the things that are often driving the progression of building codes, as well as the high performance homes, and that are including Energy Star, passive home, net zero, and other advanced energy targeted builds. And the important thing to note is that it doesn't matter what the build type is. If it's just meeting, and I don't say just meeting because some codes are difficult, but if it's meeting that code, or if it is meeting those much higher and stringent efficiency targets, the key component here is going to be ensuring that the home is treated as a complete system, and that being eliminating that leakage. So we're talking here about what the codes are, and I'm interested, at the end, if you guys want to throw out where you're located and some of that to help us understand what you're up against. But we know that the codes are first and foremost, the air tightness verification is going to be a requirement, right? So the U.S. has upcoming 2021 IECC revisions, and if you're not there, the progression is going in that direction. So more and more states are going to be moving towards that 3 ACH 50 mark, as well as commercial buildings having the airtight testing mandatory there too. And I won't talk to it too much here. I'll let Scott do that in a minute. But Canada has been practicing, this for some time and achieving that 2.5 ACH. some of the implications here, failing in the rework creates that lost opportunity, costing you more, instead of the upfront labor resource and the draw there, reworking it is obviously going to cost you more. So it costs you the labor aspect, it can cost you the material aspect, cost of recertification and additional tests, and then obviously the missed revenue opportunity from being able to do additional projects that the crew would normally be on if they didn't have to go back and rework it. So that's a big reason where we're, when we talk about this, and we'll get into the process a little bit more, and I think you'll see where AeroBarrier fits. So here's just a US map sharing that. Obviously, that's if it's a zero energy ready, Energy Star, 2012 IACC or Passive House, you can see the climate zones and where those requirements fall. We don't really get into this too much, but we know that if you're not there, it is going to be creeping towards that 3 ACH 50 level.
Great, thanks, Jared. And just you saw those numbers there from Jared's slide. Kind of the goal in the future is to get to that passive, that 0.6, or even a net zero, which we call it in Canada. You guys call it, I think, energy net zero. How's that work? A little bit different, but Canada has always been a leader in building, particularly in residential building. We came out with the R2000 program in the 70s, so it's always been on our minds, and for good reason. The climate here is typically colder in most regions. So even our building code in section 9, you can see here that it talks about having a continuous air barrier. So we've been talking about it for a while. So it is in the code. Can you give me the next slide there, Jared? I don't have that functionality right now.
Yep. And
so we have steps towards net zero, and this is really, really important. There's this 2032 mark. So we're coming up into just over a decade where we want to see 15 to 20% improvements in the code and standards over the next 10, 20 years. And we'll probably always want to see that. And so you can see this ladder here in Canada where, we're bringing in our standard here of this energy rating system of 80. We go up in Canada. I know it goes down, the scale goes down in the US. So just remember, keep that in mind. Energy Star right now has many levels to it. And right now we're at approximately, using air changes per hour, 2.5 air changes per hour. And when we go to R2000, which is the next step up, but there's also an Energy Star level of that, it gets to 1.5 air changes per hour. And so we have in Canada taken some steps to get to tighter structures. And what we're seeing here is 1.5 with builders. It's a challenge to get there. So we can comfortably get to 1.8, 1.7 with traditional methods, but it becomes logarithmic. So to get to that 1.5 and lower becomes more challenging. And this is where AeroBarrier helps a ton. And then you can see as we go up the ladder, we're getting to different levels of net zero, which is going to get us well below 1.5 and ultimately below 1, and this is on new builds tract type of housing. So we have up in Canada, we definitely have a strong mandate to have tighter houses. Next slide, please. And so British Columbia has been the first to adopt, and they call it the STEP code. And you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, 2032, this is the target date. And you can see they've put in these different levels, and each of these different levels comes with a different air tightness. And it always, as Jared said earlier, starts with air tightness. If you talk to builders, you can't model or optimize a home's design unless you start with the air change per hour, because it's so elusive. And up until now, we have not been able to dial it in. I remember when I first started talking to builders a couple of years ago, one, they don't really know what their air barrier is. So that's the start. On a site where I've seen two site supers, they both give me different answers. So there's some education that's going on there as well. So there's an opportunity to become an expert on site. So we start right there, and then we say, let's model this home now for whatever air tightness you want. In the US, it could be, let's model for 3. Now we can model and optimize for 3. In Canada, we might want to model and optimize for 1.5, and in different areas, it could be 1, or if we want to do passive, it could be 0.6. The key is now, when we get up here to step 5 with AeroBarrier, it's dialed in. You don't have to worry about it. Next slide, please. So the path to net zero, this is what it is. It is cheaper to save a watt than it is to make a watt. So we start right here with improving the envelope, and that's where AeroBarrier it comes into play. The other two are resizing your mechanicals and then getting into renewable energy sources. So as I see it, if you're a dealer, you're an insulator, you're a contractor, you can be the expert in improving the envelope, and you can also take other opportunities to round out your business and become a mechanical expert, or you can get into renewables. And this is that I was talking about earlier. The hurdle is air leakage. GTA stands for Greater Toronto Area. Sorry, I should have written that out. Builders see themselves getting into 2 ACH50 very comfortably in traditional methods. But once you go a little bit below that, it becomes a little more challenging. And again, that's where AeroBarrier helps out. So next slide, please. Okay. So what we know this. We know that moisture travels with air. So if we can stop the air movement, we can stop the moisture movement. Why is that important? Well, we know that because building houses and structures, it's all about moisture management. We're always just trying to wick the water away. We're trying to not let the vapor in, because that's what wrecks houses. If you're in the building industry, I don't even have to say it or repeat it, probably will, but we always have to take care of manage the moisture in the water. So uncontrolled air leakage accounts for 40% of winter energy use. Can you imagine that? That's just air leakage. Now you have an opportunity to control it. Air leakage introduces moisture, noise, pollutants, and it varies dramatically hour by hour, day by day, depending on the pressure season to season. We'll go to the next one. So air leakage, this is a 1-inch square hole. It will transfer 30 liters of water. So you've got this flow in the heating season of water moving through your air barrier, and now you're going to have this higher moisture content, colder temperature, meeting a warm temperature. We all know what happens. Now we get condensation. Ultimately, we get a problem with the structure. We're gonna deteriorate the structure. So, so the air barrier is far more important than the vapor retarders. In fact, many U.S. states, and we're trying to work it out up here, is to kind of get rid of the poly on the vapor side and just tighten it up, because we know air and moisture move together. Next slide. So here's that, go back to what we talked about earlier. Air leakage is the most significant factor when it comes to heat loss, particularly winter heat loss. So you can look and see on these pie charts, that air leakage is 30%. So wow, now just dial it in. We know what we can get on a code. There's a code 2012, Energy Stars 25%, get to R2000, now you're getting tighter, it's 15%, but there's the huge impact with air leakage. Next slide. So the benefits of reduced leakage, we've been talking about it. There's an dramatic savings on the home's heating and cooling. So we see immediate savings. We enjoy a more comfortable home. And when I look at trade-offs, being more consistent room to room, feeling warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer, I think that's a huge benefit to the occupant, so to the consumer. And that, as a builder, you look at trade-offs, particularly in Ontario, what would we have more benefit? Taking out like a drain water heat recovery or improving the air tightness. Well, we'd rather take out the drain water heat recovery because consumers don't feel that benefit. But I can tell you this, in the winter, they can feel a cold room. So we want to prevent those drafts. And preventing moisture from entering the wall system. We all know what we talked about, moisture ruins houses. So that's one thing that we can do, is reduce the air leakage, reduce the moisture leakage, improve the wall system, diminish outside noise. We know that noise travels through holes. It's opening. So we by reducing the air leakage, we reduce the noise as well. Defend against insects and pests. I remember 3 years ago, I was telling my sister about this, and she goes, "I'd have less ants in my house." I gave her a price. She said, "I'd do that in a heartbeat." So, and she lives in a new house. She actually lives in a very new house, which is fairly tight. I think it's about 3 air changes per hour, and she still gets some ants. She'd be happy. Well, she wouldn't be happy, I'm telling everybody this, but she would be happy to seal up those small holes. And I'm going to show you a little bit later on the size of the holes, like actual pictures I've taken off some job sites that I can show you what we're sealing here. So, and then improve indoor air quality. So next slide, please. So it's going to help, seal out the pollutants and allergens. And in terms of that indoor air quality, it's big in my life. I spent 30 years selling HRV and ERV, and I'm really of the belief of, it sees right down there, I'm going to skip to the bottom, kind of make it tight and ventilate it right. I say to people all the time, they ask me, about HRVs or ERVs, and it's much bigger in Canada than it is in the US. I know in the snow belt and some of the other areas we see ERVs, but it's great to build it tight, but then we also have to ventilate it right as well. I say to people all the time, I said, would you live in a body without lungs? And we don't have to put up a survey because I know what the answer is. Not many of us want to do that. So it's really, really critical that we look at the house as a system, right? Because of all the things that we talked about, that less vapor diffusion, less transportation of air pollutants kind of in and out, energy, better performance, more comfortable, and then codes. I don't know a lot of things in this world. I can't forecast a lot of things. Probably not going to be able to forecast even the last 4 states of the election right now, but I can forecast this. The one thing I can forecast is that houses in North America are going to get tighter, not looser. And that's a fact.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah, I like it. If I could just jump on, I really like that top line. The code enforces it, energy impact drives it, and the health of the building requires, and actually the inhabitants, the health of the inhabitants there too. And you couldn't have said it better, with the lung analogy.
So
we'll talk here with some of the variables that are that you have in trying to tighten up the building envelope. If you ask the question, Scott, like you said earlier, who's responsible for maintaining the integrity of the building envelope? And ask that question. It's a great question, but the answers are often not very reassuring to the overall goal. So, what we'll talk about here, and you'll see in the process where AeroBarrier sort of resolves that with having, whoever that is that's doing that work, it's going to alleviate that concern. And here we go. Some challenges of the traditional methods. These are some pictures of, real job sites here. The left image is the fire-rated foam being used as an air barrier. This kind of equates to the misuse of a product, wasted time, wasted material here. Sure, can it do it? Yeah, it can perform that way. Just not really what it was intended for. So, and a lot of wasted material. Same thing on the right there. It's a much cleaner look, but still wasted material and time. In this case, I believe it was a $3,200 cost for some results that were not ideal, and they realized later that it could have been done for much less than that by targeting the leakage instead of guessing. And here's more pictures. We've got some poor execution and inconsistent on the left here, right? So you can see the attempt to seal. Actually all the way across with wasted materials and wasted time. And really the big component here around the challenge is the human element. And you can hire, some great craftsmen, that would go in and seal and tighten it up. Problem is that, you still have, in a lot of cases, you have other trades affecting that. So all of these being the best attempt, and we certainly admire that. But with AeroBarrier, it's going to remove that human element. It's going to put a building science approach behind it, and we'll share that process with you here in a minute. So even spray foam has some inconsistencies. It's going to work as effectively and as well as the person that is spraying it. So, it's not sealed on the bottom plates and the rim joist. Again, great product, but it can be expensive, and it can be, in some cases, a waste. And once this is covered up, it's going to be extremely hard to get back in there.
Jared?
Yeah.
I just quickly add these two pictures here. The comparison here is, this is a spray foam job on the left hand side that is just a bad spray foam job. Should not have been happening. I think it was all applied at one time. But generally speaking, I've been on a lot of job sites. We don't see a lot of that for our insulators on the phone. This was used in another presentation to show bad spray foam.
Sure.
I can tell you this though, if we were on a job and that did happen, this has such a diagnostic capability, we'd find it right away prior to it being sealed up. So thank you.
Sure, great point. All right, so summarizing these points again here, you've got the inconsistent results, only being able to see what you can reach. Often a lot of the leaks aren't apparent, they're not accessible, or they're so small that, and when combined, they accumulate to a much larger leakage issue. But the time and labor intensive, the chasing the leaks is very inefficient. The material waste, also here around the COVID situation has created some scheduling challenges. I don't know if that's everywhere, obviously, but in some areas where there's a limitation to how many actual workers can be on the job site. So a little schedule challenge there. Use of some unhealthy materials, high in VOCs, off-gassing, the need for special suits or ventilators. That both impacts the short term with workers during the project and possibly the longer term with the homeowner that's living inside of the space. And then the traditional methods that are suited for rough-in, those can become costly to resolve once the finished surfaces are in place. And that's where I was, again, to Scott's point, hopefully that spray foam on the picture on the left doesn't get covered up. And no doubt somebody would correct it, but if it does, then you've got a leakage issue, and it's going to be rather costly to fix. All right, so with dialing in the optimization part that Scott touched on a little bit, AeroBarrier is going to be that convenient, cost-effective approach that's going to seal homes in less than 3 hours and provide that verification of what was accomplished there. So it does change the way that homes are going to be built. This is going to provide a consistent, tighter building envelope. It's verified, it's predictable, and it gives documented results. It's a single process, and it's going to be a huge time savings. So again, those three things are very consistent, very certified and verified results in a single process. It's a huge benefit. This video will describe the process, and then we'll get into that a little bit. All right. So we'll dig in, I'll pass this off to Scott here. We'll dig in on the some of those process steps a little bit deeper.
Great, thanks, Jared. And I had trouble with the sound. I'm not sure if everybody else did, but that video is available online on YouTube. But we can also send it out if you put your name in the chat bar as well. But
Absolutely.
the process, I know, I'm not sure how many people have seen the process. Maybe by a show of hands, it looks like a few have. So energy raters know this. Builders who test their houses will know this. They have a blower door test that is conducted, and that blower door test is actually done by exhaling the house. So it's pulling air out of the house, and we're trying to measure how much leakage there is under 50 pascals. The AeroBarrier process is the opposite. What we're doing is we are pressurizing the house. So we're taking the blower door fan, we're basically turning around, and we're going to pressurize it at 100 pascals, twice that we would do a blower door test at. So when that happens, the structure starts to leak. That air just wants to escape. So what we do then is we go in just before we get that all set up. We cover any horizontal surfaces to protect anything that the consumer may interact with after. So if there are any finished floors or any like window ledges, anything that the material that's going to dry fall, that's material that doesn't find a hole, is going to dry fall to a horizontal surface. It does not stick to a vertical surface. There's so much pressure on the house that it just sits in the air, goes for a hole. Once that gets to the hole, the velocity picks up, it coagulates, and it fills up that hole. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then that would be the process of sealing. We're pressurizing a house, and you can see in this middle picture that we start to mist in, and that's what you saw in the video. So we start to mist in these atomized particles, and these are the particles that the airflow paths, as they're trying to escape the structure, they carry these atomized particles along, and they deposit the seal, and they coagulate, creating that air tightness. And the video, Jared had mentioned it, the software regulates the entire process. So you just basically are controlling the parameters within the house. You're monitoring the ceiling. Everything is done from the outside. There's nobody inside. And all the way along, you can see, go to the next slide, please, Jared. You can see the results, and you can see how the structure is getting tighter. One of the questions we get a lot of, kind of, is this new? Where did this come from? Those sorts of questions, and they're great questions. And this is not it's not new. It's a repurposed process. It started with AeroSeal. Many of you would know that. This is a duct sealing technology that we have that was developed in 1994 at the University of Berkeley in their laboratories by Dr. Mark Madero. And so, as I said, everybody, this is not created in Jimmy's garage. It's the real thing. It has the proper approvals that you can see here: the STM 2178, the E84 for smoke flame thread, S101 in Canada. It has the CDPH from California. It's Green Guard Gold certified. It's 70% of it is water. So there are no there's no off-gassing, so ultra low VOCs. It's inert, it's an organic compound, it's UL, and it's a National Greenbelt standard certified product, and it seals up to ½ an inch and down to the size of a human hair. And this is going to be important. Remember that, because I'm going to bring that up in a slide, a couple of slides from now. And it's stress tested up to 40 years with no signs of degradation. When I sent the SDS reports off to an engineer here in Ontario, one who's very fastidious, and I sent him off, and within a minute he sent back, and his entire email was, wow, because there is no off-gassing. It's a very friendly sealant that's made by a major manufacturer to our specifications. So next slide, please. And we just run the machine until that ACH, that air change per hour goal, is met. So it's really nice. This is where all those advantages of being able to model the house in advance, because we know what that air change level is going to be. The toughest part of building, and that air changes, we've got it dialed in. So next slide, please. And you can see so I'm going to show you some before and after shots. This is a nice box. You can see on the left-hand side the hole between the drywall and the box, and you can see on the right-hand side how it's filled in just automatically, like a caulk. Like, it's the perfect bead of caulking on there. And more importantly, I wanted to look in the top left inside the box. You can see there's a little wee square that goes to the outside, and look at how beautiful that bead of caulking is on that hole. So the air was escaping through there under pressurization. It pulled some sealant along with it, and then it coagulates right where the hole is to the outside. So next shot. And here are some other shots that we see, like, you can see kind of on the foam here, missed the foam. We can see it kind of picking up on the side, just around this fitting here, around anywhere there's leakage, you will see the sealant will start to move around. You can just look through some of those pictures. These are not seen by the naked. You're not going to know what's going to leak, what's not going to leak, but air escaping will self-guided and will find the holes on its own. Next slide, please. So I was doing a job, and we just put it all up there. This outside blue area represents the surface area of a house. So surface area, back one please. The surface area of a house is the walls, ceiling, floor, separating the inside from the outside. And so we started this house, it was 2.6 air changes per hour. And then it has an approximate surface area of 7,000 square feet and a 3,000 square foot house. So imagine that it's a 3,000 square foot house, it's a 7,000 square feet of surface area. The total amount, if we collected all of the sealant that was left in the house, it was 1 square foot. And with that 1 square foot of material, we brought it down to 0.6 air changes per hour at 50 pascals. So the reason I want to show you that is here, representing in blue the entire house of surface area, and this little dot right in the middle, this black dot, is the collected amount of material that was left, of friendly low VOC material that was left in the house, that took us from 2.6 down to 0.6, which is spectacular. There's no other way to do that. Next slide, please.
It's a really good visual.
So what did we seal? And this is, how some people say, a picture's 1,000 words. I took this picture myself. I'm going to take 1,000 words probably to explain it. I apologize for that. So this is, I was so excited when I took the picture. This is the middle hinge of an exterior door. And this is the frame of the door. And then if you keep going to the right, this is the shim pack, and quite a shim pack on there. So if you see this white material between the shims, that's AeroBarrier. These are the size of holes, real holes that we're sealing up, that the system is finding. And here, I want to take you to the bottom. You can see this cobweb down at the bottom of the picture, and look underneath the cobweb and see the sealant there. It's self-guided, it's non-intrusive. The air is being blown out through that hole, and it goes under the cobweb, takes the atomized particles, and puts it into the shim. If you looked at that with the naked eye before, there's no way you would know which part of that shim pack was leaking, but the escaping air finds it. Next, please. So I want to give you a little experience that we had in Toronto with he's a passive architect. He buys these old houses, and he actually, 1942 semi, and he took this one and he was trying to make it passive. When he bought it, it started at 9.81 air changes per hour. They did some, kind of large work, insulation, started putting the AeroBarrier, did some foaming, real nice job. They got it down to 6.1. Then they started to get serious, and you can see the dates here, 1/23/19, and then they got serious, and then they started going after some bigger holes that were missed in their initial installation, and so they got it down to 2.96. Now they worked a little bit more, and they got it down to 2.43. So, I talked to him a couple times. You can do AeroBarrier? No. He was trying to hold. I said, give me a little bit more time. So I call him on this day. It's in the morning of February 7th, and it's 1.62. This is done by an energy rater in Toronto, very qualified energy rater. And he goes, okay, 1.62, we're going to work on it all day. They got 3 guys, so they're going to spend now 3 guys, 8 hours, and they're going to try to get it down to passive, which is 0.6, which Jared showed you earlier. They worked all day. I called him around dinner time. I said, so how'd it go? He goes, well, Austin tested it was 1.61. 3 guys worked all day. They got it. They did a nice job. They got it from 1.62 to 1.61. So I said, are we doing it? He goes, come in a couple of days. So we come in a couple of days, and it was a wintry day up here in Canada. This is right in the middle of the city. So, we set up a little tent out there, and we started, doing all the AeroBarrier things, and we ended up at the end of the day, we ended up at 0.34 ACH50. And really, it was all set up. Nobody's in the house. and we started sealing. Go to the next one. We basically did this. We kind of stayed and ate Portuguese donuts and drank coffee while we just keep going, just keep hitting that button there, Jared. It doesn't work. This is the question. Does it work? And now here's a picture. We go back to that thermal picture, please. The thermal picture here. Now look at this. This is taken on, this is 228 after we sealed it, after they've done their work, and you can tell, what's leaking, what's not leaking. So does all this stuff we're doing work? Look at this. Look at this house next door and look at how much heat is transferring to the outside. Wow. And look at how little is transferring here. Most importantly, to the right, look at this one on the right. The 1940 style 70 on the right hand side here is not, it's just absolutely glowing through the wall, which means you're getting incredible heat loss. So yes, all this stuff we're doing works. So we just keep going through the slides, please, Jared. And we did this, just hit them all up there. Yeah, the labor time study to achieve 1.5 air changes per hour at 50. So we took a large production builder who builds Energy Star homes, roughly 2,000. We followed and tracked what he was doing this for 6 months study. And we tallied the labor and the material, of what was used in his current traditional methodology. And we realized by studying this over the 6 months that they were putting in 16 additional hours across 3 sites at $55 per hour. It's $880 right there that they didn't have to do. Jared talked earlier about, man hours, and he talked about materials, and caulking, foam, and tape per house of about $950. Turned out to be $1,050 for townhomes because of the party wall. The site super time concerned, worry, crossing his fingers, was that 3 hours, 4 hours, that sort of thing. So we feel that there's an estimated savings of approximately $1,500 to $2,500. I'm going to say these are in Canadian funds, so you take that down a little bit for the US, that a builder can do if he uses AeroBarrier to still achieve that 1.5. There's a beautiful trade-off there. And you can see in this garage, we talked earlier about the spray foam. This is the other thing about AeroBarrier, we found out is a great diagnostic tool. Up in this corner, it was blowing out, and it's just because they didn't hit the foam properly. So there's a lot of benefits to that. We'll go to the next one, the labor study. So optimizing the trade-offs as well. So, this is really, really critical. As we said before, you start with air tightness and you're like, okay, what can I do? Can I reduce my exterior insulation? Can I, right size my insulation on the inside? Drain water heat recovery for Canada, $600. Nobody really knows the effect. It's a great trade-off. Triple pane windows, they're heavy. They have a tendency to sag at times, the hard on the software. You can bring that back to double glaze with a nice low E and save $1,000. And then removing party wall sealing. We've done, we're able to show in houses that we can seal them up with the drywall approach with AeroBarrier and get them to seal 100%. You can save $700. These are just different trade-offs that are in the buffet that are available to a builder, that could be recommended by an energy advisor, that a builder can trade off to pay for AeroBarrier and still get a better effect in terms of air change per hour. Next slide.
All right.
So, you got it?
Yep. So basically everything that wraps up into this is really allowing the contractor to take control of the process, right? So and this is a process that has an average of 22 contractors or workers that are involved throughout the process into one single step, right? So it's gonna allow installers and contractors here to easily work around other trades with no downtime. Prepping the surfaces while other trades are in there, it's no issue. Shutting down the project site for a couple of hours during the seal process and then right back in as little as 30 minutes to resume operations after that. So that's a quick and dirty of what Scott just went through. But I like the simplification of it because it really does provide exactly that, simplification. We talk about optimization and continuing to deliver at or above the performance for less. And that all, obviously, as we've been saying all through this, is all going to be depending on that air changes per hour. But before COVID, there's builders and contractors use AeroBarrier to really increase that efficiency, lower the labor costs, less material waste, and everything we've been talking about. There's also the ability to rethink the insulation packages, rethink the framing materials, to streamline the air sealing process, like turning multiple steps into the single step, and then the ability to define the thermal envelope without cost implications pre or post drywall. So that's something that's very important as well. But knowing that your air changes are going to provide more accurate upfront energy modeling, you're going to know what the target is. You're going to have the confidence to be able to hit it. Again, that peace of mind, they're sleeping at night knowing that the requirement was met there the first time. It is something that also allows you to then turn and go and do more work. So the increased building costs here, the innovate and save approach after COVID, we know that building materials everywhere have gone up. So where we were talking about rethinking the size of the lumber, stud spacing, increase of, that is an increase of the cost of lumber and the materials. Seeing sometimes, depending on the size of the home, obviously, but $15,000 US can be added to a single build. So controlling the air tightness affords the opportunity to downsize that thickness and still deliver that quality. And that's really the big component here, or the big overall achievement is that maintaining the quality of the build with less costly materials. Again, same thing here with the insulation package. Enhance the benefits of spray foam or any other type of insulation material by reducing that air leakage. It'll perform better. Everything will perform better with that. Reduce the schedule conflicts we talked about earlier there. That's really, there's no more go backs. There's no more redos. It's a guaranteed process that before leaving the job site, it'll be certified, verified where that leakage ends up. And, that's going to be that the next step, the next home up, moving on to get that completed. And then right sizing the mechanicals, Scott touched on a little bit. We know that getting it more efficient overall, it can take a half ton or a ton off of an air conditioner unit, and that can mean $1,000 or more. The overall impact here, so added revenue stream for a contractor business is going to be able to obviously add more revenue to it because you can do more work, but growing the company sustainably with more staff, but also understanding that this is going to take minimal labor resources, right? So it's not something that has to necessarily be staffed up for, and with labor shortages being ever increasing, this is a way to help combat that. You can add the consistent workflow to complement the other operations. And then with it being a new technology, it kind of gives that competitive edge. That's why a lot of our dealers have found that they can be the experts. They can become the champion of air sealing in their area. They're the go-to. And to Scott's example of the flat, where over the time period of construction and build, and the crew being able to get it down to 1.61, and then with AeroBarrier coming in and it taking it down below one air change, that could have been done right from the beginning, and it doesn't have to always be the reactive approach to solving a problem like that. It should be, and it could be the proactive approach of let's just seal it right with AeroBarrier up front. You can differentiate with this as an add-on service, so no matter what you're doing, if you're an installation contractor or rater, this makes for a good complement to what you're already doing. It's the foot in the door here, so you can establish the network and the brand in the market, and you can be ahead of the curve on the air tightness. So installation contractors, it's more project volume for you without having to go out and find a different customer base. And for energy raters, you get to strengthen that relationship there by offering this other service. Not just identifying problems, but you're able to fix them as well. So getting started with AeroBarrier, what's included in the total package, Scott described a little bit. So it's a modified blower door, the air nozzle stands that are set up throughout the space, the AeroBarrier machine itself, a 7x14 foot box trailer. We can also configure into box trucks. Depends on, some people like the dedicated resource and where parking may be maybe a little bit more difficult, we can certainly do that. But it'll also come with a compressor, as the system does use that compressed air source. All of the other equipment, the laptop, and then a power or generator for that good clean power source there. So everything is all in this mobile workspace for AeroBarrier. All right, so pricing strategies and the business opportunities. So how many seals per day? I hope I'm not stealing someone's question for the Q&A later, but it does come up a lot where they want to know. So you can do up to 3 seals per day, and that is something that is probably not going to be able to be achieved any other way by sealing by hand. So this is really key. If you've got volume work, especially, and there's the quality of the build or the code that is going to drive the need for hitting a high efficiency and moving on to the next one without any go backs, without any callbacks and going back. This will be an extremely good way to go. So how is it typically sold? So getting builders on board is a key part, right? So they're obviously going to want to understand what's in the build, but it's also going to be that educational component around how it's going to help the existing building materials that they have, or provide a means for them to rethink that wall package, the framing package, the insulation package to be able to save on costs and still provide that high quality build. So, I guarantee they'll be interested around hearing more about it. And, we've also got some assistance here that we can help with the AeroBarrier team, making that connection and the understanding to the builder is key. And we do that a lot here, and we're happy to also help with that. So this is an actual example here with Pacific AeroBarrier. And Scott, you want to talk about this particular one?
Yeah, I can. So this is a project that we secured out in the lower mainland of Vancouver, of BC, in Vancouver, and they managed to do 6 units in one day, which was incredible. They used a couple of machines, but look at the results they have on each one. Under 1 for almost everyone. There were 2 that are a little bit higher. It worked really well. And you said it there, Jared. There's no other way that you can get this type of result this quickly. And it's interesting from a builder perspective, and Ian, he was the guy that runs Pacific AeroBarrier. At first when you show up on site, builders, there may be some reluctance, they're not sure, but when they know that within 3 or 4 hours that you can take their unit from 3 air changes per hour, or 4.5, 5 hours air changes per hour, down to 1 air change per hour, it changes the whole dynamic. All of a sudden, when you get there, there's a place for you to park. They're ready for you because it's that beneficial to the builder. And that's what, kind of Ian is finding on this project is when they're ready, they call him and he comes in and does 6 at a time. So it's a 107 unit project. But there's that. And the other thing I wanted to add, you talked about getting started with AeroBarrier, Jared, and I remember the very first job that we did here in Canada. It was 2 passive houses in one day, and we drove out into a forest that these people did not want to be found. We opened up the gate. The only thing we added was water and sealant were the only 2 things. Other than that, the entire rig is comprehensive. It has everything you need to do a job. And I think that's really important for people looking at this, for dealers, potential dealers, to make sure that they know that they're getting everything they need to seal a job. And when we got on that job site, there was no power. So, we brought our own power. As you said, we have our own compressor, we have our own, everything you need is in that trailer.
Awesome. So here's, we've got just about 7 minutes, and we want to leave some time here for Q&A. But I do want to share. There's a lot that we shared here. There's so much more that we didn't, just because of the time constraint. And the big thing here is, how does it fit with the individual contractors, with you, right? How does it work with your numbers, with your builds, with your builders, and all that? And that's something that I think we can only do on a one-on-one basis. And we do that all the time with contractors. Again, we can engage with builders if you want to bring them along and have the discussion as well. But, Scott, I want to invite you to, let's take the next steps here, set up some time to meet and discuss where we can run through an actual business model breakdown for you. We can talk about, with the Canada and US specific with leasing and financing options available for you to, as a component of your consideration. And then the government program eligibility, both again with that are Canada and US specific. But we want to provide everything to you in that discussion that's going to allow you to decide if this is going to be something that you find will complement what you're currently doing, that can help you grow your business, that can help you achieve those efficiency targets, and that can really, it has a way of strengthening the builder relationship by just being, so much more reliable in terms of meeting the code or the energy target. So that's what, that's what we feel like the next step, it makes the right sense for the next steps. Our contact information, Scott's there on the left for Canada, mine on the right, and we can go to the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you guys. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Yep.
So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jared. So we do have some questions that did trickle in, so we'll get to those again with time and everything. I do want to say one, it sounded like Joe earlier, we hit on the risk you take by how many contractors are involved in this process and how it goes forward. And Joe put the comment as a quote, failures occur at transitions ... of responsibility. That was not my scope, where contractors kind of lose sight of what their responsibility is and play that blame game. So that was nice to hear as a kind of a reconfirming it.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the common questions. I'll let both of you guys go about it, but can the product work on an existing occupied home?
Yeah, it definitely can. There's some challenges, right? So the finishings that are going to be there are going to have to be, everything first of all has to be removed. All clothing, all furniture, all belongings. And the prep work is going to be a bit more behind what a new construction home would be. We do have contractors that are doing this and have done this, but absolutely it can be done. Ideally, it's at a gut renovation level or something like that, just because of the setup and the process to prep, but it can be. It's not widely being done that way, but it can be.
All right, we have a question from Elizabeth. This is stress tested with no signs of degradation. That's great. Over what time frame is the no degradation sustained? After 10 years, 20 years, settling occurs over time. How does this hold up against settling?
Yeah, there's still, we have the 40-year stress test that Scott mentioned in there. There's still some work to be done on at what point does it degrade. We don't have a determination point on it. It is something, as we look at sealant, the chemical makeup of it, and where we landed on this being something that we feel is very durable. We don't have a good determination on it, but what did you say the name was that had that question?
Elizabeth.
Okay. We'll get a follow-up on it. See if I can get you any better information on that. The material itself is, when it cures, it's going to be semi-rigid. So it's going to be durable. It's I would say it's as durable or as like a construction adhesive, but once it's in place, to remove it, it's not going to be very easy. So flexing of the house and things like that would happen, as the house would settle. There's no doubt that there could be some long-term effect, but as far as you see that picture where that sealant got into the shim pack that Scott showed, there's no other adhesive there's no other sealant that's going to be getting into that level. And so we look at it as it's definitely going to be better. The house is going to settle no matter what, and AeroBarrier is going to have the longer, better result on it. But good, clear determination. I wish we had something.
Can I just add onto that, Jared? So Elizabeth, we had that question at the beginning as well. One, the material, it sticks to like 41 different types of construction materials, and once it's on, like it's it's on there. But we went back and tested 2 of the houses that we did in our first year. We tested them about a year and a half after, and the blower door number was exactly the same in both of them. So we're watching a couple of houses over time to see that. And so far, after we'll say 2 years, we have seen no degradation in a real life experience. So we feel really comfortable with the material that we have, its adhesive properties. We also feel really comfortable and confident in our accelerated age testing. And now we're starting to see data that is showing us that it is holding up in an actual situation.
AJ would like to know how big of a square footage the one rig can handle. So what are the restrictions? What are the constraints? How big of a space can AeroBarrier seal up to?
So it'll depend on how leaky it is, right? So there have been large commercial spaces that have been sealed, and it's really whatever needs to be done to pressurize the space. So if there's an additional blower door, additional pressurization, we can certainly adapt to be able to do that. So there is no real limit. It's on the size of the space. It's really on being able to pressurize it. So if it needs to be compartmentalized or something like that, then again, we're talking commercial space. Then that's what may have to be done if it's a extremely large space. But additional blower doors should be able to help.
And Jared, I'll add, we did a job here in the Toronto area that was in terms of size, it was about 260,000 cubic feet. And we used 2 systems because of what you're saying, just to get the pressurization. And we used approximately 12 spray nozzles. So in the capacity, is 16. So that's what we use. And we sealed that building to 0.93 ACH 50.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yep. My understanding, I don't know if it helps them or anything, but 7,500, 8,000 square feet is pretty typical, or at least a safe bet on some of these numbers, with one rig at least. But to Jared's point, you're talking about tighter homes. Obviously, it's going to be easier than something that starts at 19 ACH. Ryan in here has a couple questions. So firstly, he's asking, what is the cost of the rig? And I know this one differs between the Canadian market and the US market. He would also like to know, are there any national large regional builders currently using AeroBarrier? And are there any temperature constraints?
Okay, so making sure here, cost, national builders, and temperatures.
Yep.
Okay. So the cost of the trailer is it starts out at $60,000 US, and we can get into if you're interested in the details behind the components of that and everything. We're happy to do that one-on-one here. So put a comment in if you'd like for us to reach out. But that's the startup. Get you started with some sealant as well. National builders, we do have a few. There's some that are Mandalay Homes is using AeroBarrier on a number of their homes. The DR Hortons of the world, the Pulte's. I know that we've done some work for them regionally. We haven't done work, as far as a national fit for them yet. So we'll leave that out there because that's obviously. For them to work it into all aspects of their builds everywhere. That's our ultimate goal, and if we're able to do that, then that provides a lot of opportunity for contractors like you. And then temperature-wise, so the system does have a heater that's built in because it will. There is some need to make sure that the space is heated adequately. But what during the winter months, typically it's going to be installed after drywall, so there would be heat. It would be heated somewhat to at that stage of the build. But the heater is going to take that liquid sealant and it helps to dry it out, make it light, and then have the sealant perform the way that it's supposed to. So there's not, I mean, unless it were to get down into negatives, Scott, maybe you got a little bit more beat on that on the Canadian side. I know you guys have much, much more cold examples.
Yeah, so a couple things. National builders, just so I put it out, we don't have a lot of national builders in Canada, but we do work for Minto. We also do work for Mattamy, who's the largest privately held builder in North America. So we are working on a kind of a national schedule. We also work with a Habitat for Humanity right across Canada. We consider them a kind of a national brand. So we're getting a lot of airplay from it comes to national or large companies that are even or more regional. In terms of the winter, it's the process. It's all about controlling the temperature, and as Jared says, there's a heater on there. In colder temperatures, we do need some auxiliary heat as well, but it's very easily done to put that into the house. So it's we've developed a system for cold weather seals.
Doug has a couple. He may have a question and a statement, but he's looking at the builder as the end user, as he should be. At what point in the build do you perform the AeroBarrier? Is it after drywall, before, and what's the typical cost for about a 3,000 square foot home? Which I think the 3,000 square foot home, from my understanding, we might need to break that up based on what that application is in the build process or when they start it. So Scott, maybe you can speak to that one.
Yeah, and typically you can, you can seal the house as soon as you can pressurize it. We used to, we say a lot after first mud, but we also have to be clear with the builder, because we have had one where we said, oh, we come in after mud, we get there are no windows. So what we need to do is we need to be able to pressurize the house, and we need to have the AeroBarrier installed. That's really critical. So if you're doing an exterior AeroBarrier, which we're seeing a lot more of right across the North America, you can go in early, and you can also go to first mud, even first prime, and we've gone even a little bit further. So there's a nice range in there, so you can fit into the builder's schedule, and there's a way to work with the builder. So there's some flexibility on when you show up and when you can actually do the seal, but to keep in mind, it's when you can pressurize the house.
Which that one brings us to another point Ryan's making. So I think this is kind of the beauty of AeroBarrier being self-guided and everything, but he's saying he's seen applications after drywall. Wouldn't this leave uncontrolled air leakage within the wall cavity?
So what we've seen, because you're at 100 Pascal, so that's like a 80 kilometer, 50 mile per hour wind that's going into the house. And so that sealant is traveling through, it actually goes past the drywall into the point where the velocity picks up in the AeroBarrier. I have some pictures. I didn't show them today. I'd be more than happy to share them with you, where I've been on site and I've seen houses that have drywall, poly, 2x6s, they're insulated, and 2 inches of Owens Corning foam on the outside that's gasketed and taped. And I actually have pictures of the sealant that has come to the outside, and then it stops once the hole is sealed. So it gets to that furthest point in that AeroBarrier as well, just with the pressure.
So Doug would like to know, he's moving the construction company to Texas within the next year. Is there an AeroBarrier installer in Northwest Texas?
I don't believe there's anybody covering the area, but again, I can pull up the map, and we can have a specific conversation on it. So I'll note here, Doug, if you want to share the contact info there, I'm happy to reach out. We can talk on that.
Yeah, and this one kind of beats that same competition. Ross is kind of curious, what's the competition like? And I think that brings us back to that slide where it's a new technology. I mean, new relative to a few years at this point, but it's still, the opportunity is pretty open. So I'll let you guys speak as what you're seeing in the markets. What is that competition like?
Competition as in sealing by hand or sealing by using foam. It's most of those other applications is being able to get the sealant where it needs to go, and that goes to that that person or people that are responsible, quote unquote, responsible to get it there. As we talked about, so many different people that are currently involved in it are responsible for that, for sealing it. But AeroBarrier is indiscriminate. It doesn't care. It's going to go to wherever those leak points are. So, you know, it doesn't require someone to see the gap to respond and fill the gap. You know, it's just by the physics of it, it's going to go there. So, you know, we look at, you know, we understand there is competition out there as far as other methods, but to the level of doing this with the science behind it and verifying the results, there's really nothing that combines those aspects.
If I add to that, Jared, you know, this is a patented process. So
Yeah.
we're really competing against traditional methodology. And that's what I really wanted to show you in that slide with that renovation that they were doing of, you know, with AeroBarrier, you just, you know, kick everybody's butt because you can do that. What you can do in 4 hours, guys can't do in weeks with lots of material. So in terms of the competition right now, I don't look at it in terms of competition. I look in terms of market development. You know, this is a big need in the builder market. Sealing up the houses, it's one of the most complex things to do. Houses are bigger, there's more angles, they're more complex and harder to seal, and AeroBarrier does this through a self-guided process. So I look at it more as how do we develop the market, and we're doing that by strategically locating dealers across the country to service builders and renovators. And so again, go back, not really a competition thing per se, because we can beat traditional methods so easily, and we are very cost effective as well. And we do need to talk about that specifically with each individual dealer and builder, because it all depends on volume, all depends how leaky it is. So I really look at this as a market development. I know, but when I sold HRVs years ago, it was very similar. It's more about market development than traditional type of competition. I hope that helps.
Yeah. So the competition, real quick, Scott, your slide of the construction process on the flat home that you're showing, and then you showed the thermal image afterwards. The competition was all of those stages along on that timeline that you showed. I mean, that's really those competing methods, I should say, right? And then to be able to come in with AeroBarrier, the non-traditional, and deliver the you know, below one air change is. I think it's one of the best slides that I've seen, and I haven't seen that one yet. So thank you for sharing it. But that I think drives home what those traditional methods and then what AeroBarrier can deliver.
Correct.
Great. And then as just an additional point in case, what does the competition look like in terms of right now getting involved as an AeroBarrier dealer? How many contractors are we talking about? Are there certain markets that are, you know, off the playing field because we already have people there? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there are some markets where we have a number of contractors where it's all based on the number of home starts. So we look at one system, one machine for every 1,000 new home starts as that guideline. So you know, looking at individual markets like that, we can give a pretty good and easy evaluation of, is this open? And then, you know, what would it take to get you started? We're happy to do
that. So we have, looking at a scheduling point at what is the best point. I know we covered that a little bit. Do you guys see any preferences on what point is most efficient in terms of it, or is it all just dependent on, you know, when the builder says, hey, the air sealing can begin, let's go?
So I'll just add to that. So I find that after first mud is great. One of the nice things about once the drywall's on, it clamps your poly in place if you're using poly or any of your, you know, your Black Death, your acoustical caulking. So you get a better clamp. You've already got a good seal. And now we really get to go after smaller type holes where AeroBarrier is super at. You know, there's nothing that can get those small holes like AeroBarrier. So we really want to build a good house to begin with. We want to do all that large hole remediation up front. And then we want the drywall on really helps to clamp it. Or if it's a good exterior insulation like an Owens Corning or DuPont, where it's already gasketed and taped, or even a zip panel, then you're looking at small holes, and you can do it at that point in time. But I really like the drywall approach after first mud. Also for heat, particularly in Canada where it's colder, we can control the inside humidity and temperature easier.
I think we touched on this one a little bit but maybe we can reiterate it. Elizabeth has some follow-up questions as well. One of those being around, it looks like a cost savings, what they can offer back to their builders and everything, from still providing that same level of performance, but with less costly material, still quality material, but just less costly. So the question is, if a builder is using 2x6 framing with 3 inches of foam in the walls and 5 inches in the ceiling, could the contractor maintain that same level of efficiency by going to 2x4 with 2-inch frame or spray foam, for instance?
Scott, you want to?
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So Elizabeth and everybody else. So I would look at that as a kind of, you would need to model your house depending on the air change starting. I know in Canada you're going to be with 2x6. You could change from a 16-inch center to a 24-inch center, which is going to save you lumber as well. And as Jared pointed out, with COVID and the additional cost of COVID, that makes a big difference, right now, to changing that and reducing the lumber. So I would look at that as something we should be doing individually with each energy advisor, and to do that optimization up front. The difference now, though, is what your air changes per hour are, so you can actually dial in all of the other elements of the build.
We have Mitch is asking, I think this is another one of those common FAQs. How close are the results from the AeroBarrier test as far as ACH and the final blower door test? They're assuming that it doesn't quite take the blower door, the actual test. And I know, I think I've heard rumblings that some states are starting to, consider adopting what our results are, and a lot of energy raters and others that you get involved with. But I'll let you guys speak more to what is that difference in terms of our blower door from an AeroBarrier versus an official certified blower door test.
I don't have a percentage difference, but there are, in part of the prep in sealing with AeroBarrier, you're going to be masking off the mechanical openings, the doors, the windows, and whatnot. So there is that aspect where it's going to be tested with the post-seal test, the end results of the AeroBarrier test will have that factored in, and then blower door tests afterwards will not. So Scott, I don't know if you've seen or have a rule of thumb percentage or anything that you guys have seen.
Yeah, there's no rule of thumb percentage, and you kind of hit it there. We have to tape off the intentional openings, as we talked about that in the prepping. So when you go to do pushing and pulling are going to be different. So once you take off that protective tape, let's say on a bath fan, that bath fan is going to leak. So I can't give you a percentage because some houses may have 7 bath fans, some may have 1, some may be fully ducted with their HRV. Some HRVs may leak more than others. Some hot water heaters may leak more than others. But we did have this on a house early on, and we did realize that there's a difference. And there's also a difference in the blower door technology itself. Each blower door, each day, the pressure is going to be different, temperature is going to be different, could give you a slight different reading. But what I do know is when I test it the same, like if it's pressurized to pressurized, then what will end up happening is it's going to be very similar. So I know that the envelope is tight, but the mechanicals account for, let's take a bath fan. We measured this on one house at each bath fan, and these are good bath fans too, were leaking at 12 CFM per, and the house had 7 of these fans in it, and the HRV was leaking at about 25 CFM, and the hot water was about 30 CFM. Well, we had brought the house down to less than 100 CFM. So you can see that there's going to be a difference, but it was all in the mechanical. We taped off the mechanical, we did pressurization, the envelope was exactly the same. So it really comes down to the mechanicals.
I think this is a really important one that I know we talked a little bit about the business opportunity, what all is involved in it. But that training side, the upfront, like if somebody comes on, becomes one, we're not necessarily throwing them to the wolves. I know there's some training involved, there's some collateral, there's a lot of support for building out your builder network and everything. But Jared, Scott, each of you have different markets. Do you want to speak to what that initial piece looks when somebody comes on, walk through kind of that life cycle with them?
Yeah, so the initial training is going to be the technical training, which is 3 days, and it's included with the package, right? The big thing is this is a partnership. This isn't a sale. This is we want you set up to be able to perform and succeed. So that first day is going to be really discussion around the system, around the approach and the setup. The next 2 days are going to be hands-on, with a home and performing seals. So, there's some timing around where we talked about when is it the right time to be able to do a seal. So there's some timing around that technical training to make sure that the home is going to be in the right stage, and that way that time isn't going to be wasted. And we did have a training, I think one time Scott mentioned it, where it was after first coat of mud, but there were no windows, and so then there was some plan B options, which are not ideal, to try to cover up the windows or the openings for the windows. So we definitely want to make sure that that's timed right. But the ongoing support that we have here with the AeroBarrier team, it's both here in the U.S. and Scott's team, and you can talk more there, Scott, around supporting Canadian dealers. But we want to be here to help with the ongoing effort. This is only going to be successful for the individual contractors, or for us if it's aligned with the individual's contractor success. So again, it's a partnership, and that's actually the way that we refer to the dealers as dealer partners.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and we use the same protocol, so it's a 3-day training, but your success is our success. That's the mode that we do. I can tell you, so in the first day, it's all that theoretical. It's kind of how it all works, all the contents of the machine, of the trailer, and then the second day is on site, and your qualified technician will be there to show your team how to do everything. They show everything. It's very instructional. It's like, do this, do that. We go through it very, slowly, methodically, so you understand all the pieces. And then day 3 is we get you to seal a house as well. So you need to have 2 houses ready to seal. But the difference between day 2 and day 3 is now the crew has to do, your crew would do the seal, and the qualified trainer would stand back and he would just kind of involve you and then correct you. So by time the end of the 3 days, and it's very self-explanatory as well, everything kind of, once you understand how to set it up, and it's not really difficult at all, the computer kind of runs the process itself. So it's it really works well, really simple, but it's the same process. But most importantly, what I think Jared said was, it's that back end support. At the end of 3 days, we don't go away. We're partners, and we want to be here and doing this forever. So we're here to support everybody ongoing.
Yeah, the dealer network is very close too. So, a lot of your struggles are not always going to be just your struggles. Your successes won't just be the same successes. You'll be able to share that across the dealer network. If it's just something in prep work or something like that, on conference calls and things with other dealers that are doing the same thing, maybe in a different area. But that sharing of knowledge, it really makes it so that you don't have to learn everything yourself. You can hear from other people, especially ones that have been doing it much longer.
Great. I'll try to wrap up. We have a couple more. Jared, a couple questions are in here just to see if they can get your guys' contact. So I would just recommend we go back one slide while we close this out. Yeah. So Joe's asking the $1 million question. I feel like we get this all the time on social media, and we get it everywhere. So are we going to talk about ventilation? I know, Scott, you touched a little bit on it, build it tight, ventilate it right, but this whole concept around tight homes immediately equals bad IAQ. How we approach that, what are the thoughts, the reservations? I know where I stand on it, but I'll let you guys talk more to it.
I would never live in a house without balanced ventilation. So, I look back to when I first started in the building industry in the 80s. If you had a window in your bathroom, you didn't need a bath fan. you know, and we graduated to a bath fan get away from the window in your bathroom. And then we understood that we needed balanced ventilation. So for me, it's really simple. In Canada, it's in the code. I'm going to say 95% of most new houses have a balanced HRV or ERV. If anybody out there wants to talk about that specifically, you feel free to take a picture of my contact information. We can find the people in your area to talk about that ventilation. We really are on the envelope sealing side. We know that once we tighten it up, we need to use ventilation. We're not the specific experts on this. I do have some knowledge on it, but if you wanted to reach out to me, like I say, take a picture of my email or call me on my cell phone, and I would gladly help and direct you to the right person in your local area.
Yeah, that's I think it's a well-answered question, Scott. The same thing, we do believe that the tighter that it goes, it is everything should be designed, from how tight the home should be to the ventilation. So getting to the experts on that, that's who we would rely on.
And then lastly, so can this be a standalone business? It seems that you guys are pitching it as an add-on to an existing subcontractor model, but could it be a standalone business?
Yeah, I think that the reason why we pitch it as the add-on is because it's going to be the easiest to get going with your existing network. So your builder connections, are going to be the way to go. If you're starting from scratch, you're breaking in, you're competing against not just the legacy ways of air sealing. You're competing against a lot more than that. So we believe that there has to be some knowledge of an understanding of how the home operates as a system. It kind of depends on what that background is. I'll leave it open, but typically we don't. It's not that startup business with somebody that that wants to that loves it as the technology and wants to break in. We really believe that it's best served if there's a network there, connections to be able to leverage it.
If I could just add into that, Jared, in Canada a couple of years ago, there were zero. So, we had originally wanted to be the dealer developer, kind of the agent of this whole thing in Canada, but we realized quickly that builders and potential dealers wanted to see it. So we brought a machine in, we started up a dealership, and it is standalone. We now have separated that from our company. We have 3 guys that run that, and it is standalone. So it is possible, and I would say that in a few years, Jared, as we go towards, particularly in Canada, it doesn't matter, net zero ready houses, this is going to be a standalone business. But to your point, Jared, if you can bolt it onto another business, that's just another great opportunity. The other side is, you could start as an independent and bolt on other stuff to that business, and you could become the air sealing experts of the house. So there are 2 ways to look at it. But we have 3 or 4 guys here in Canada that are standalone, and then we have approximately 12 or 13 that have it as bolt on.
Great. All right, last question, because it looks like we have a possible international viewer that joined us. So thank you for joining us. So when will AeroBarrier be available in Europe? I think that's one of our questions we usually get along the line. So.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's something that, as far as being able to support it, we want to make sure that when we do bring someone on, that it's not, that partnership is very important to us, and being able to support that partnership is really the key. So, I don't think that there's a definite time. I know that we wanted to start looking at, planning for it in 2021. So, we do aero seal duct sealing internationally, in Europe, actually all over, about 16 different countries. But, so we have a template to be able to do it. Again, it is different enough from the duct sealing aspect to where we want to make sure the support element is not something that, that we fail on. So look for it, look for some, some movement in that direction in 2021. again, and I'm not sure who that came from, but we're happy to, to take your information and put it in our in our system as a reminder, because we're going to be going in that direction, and the sooner we can do that with partners, the better.
Yeah. And Jared, I just add one thing. I know that our boss, Paul, is listening onto this call. And Paul, I'd just be happy to make the sales call for you somewhere in Europe. I'm okay with it. Let me know how I can help.
Going back to Spain, Scott.
That's right. Anyway, from Canadian side, I'd like to thank everybody. So really appreciate it. If you have some calls or information that you require, questions, further questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, same thing. Thank you all for your participation and hanging on here. We look forward to some future conversations and kind of getting that breakdown for you and your business. Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate everything on this, and then Billy as well. Thank you for setting this up.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you for joining. Sorry for holding us over. We we had some pretty good turnout, so everybody hung on. So lots of great questions, and I will let everybody get back to their day, and good luck out there. We hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you.